back, spooky friends, for another cursed episode of Dairyland Frights, the paranormal podcast that covers everything spooky, creepy, and mysterious in the Midwest. My name is John, and you heard that right. This episode is cursed. All right, maybe it's not cursed because we want you to listen to the episode. We don't want to curse people. But it is our 13th episode, so we had to make a little superstitious. And I'm here with my two co-hosts, as always, Brooke and Megan. How you guys doing?
Doing great.
I'm excited about these cursed stories we're going to share with you all.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, we are excited. And we're going to be covering, there are so many cursed things out there, objects and everything. So if you really like this episode, make sure you rate it and like it, and we will definitely revisit it. So we're going to cover basically some of the best cursed object stories we could find. But like I said, there's a lot. But before we get to that, all right, Megan, I'll start with you. Do you believe in curses?
I don't know. I could be, swayed either way. I don't know. I know like some people have, museums full of cursed objects and people have crazy experiences while they're there.
Baggins.
Yeah.
Baggins, by the way.
So I don't know. I'm not sure. So we'll see what Brooke.
Yeah, go ahead, Brooke. What do you think?
I feel like, so I was doing a lot of research to try to find, I was literally looking up like most legit curses or curses that might actually be real, like trying to find, because I just think that a lot of like the most popular ones that people talk about all the time, like Annabelle and all that stuff, like I don't really believe in that. I think it kind of annoys me a little bit, but I do believe, I guess, in certain, I don't know. I think I believe a little bit in it, but I don't think it's like massive scale curses. Like, yeah,
exactly. And that's kind of, I feel what you're both saying there. Now, curse. Now, remember, curses and superstitions; those are completely different. So, for example, I'll be honest, I'm superstitious, and like when I watch Packer games, I have to sit in the same chair. I have to wear the same outfit every Sunday. I have to drink the same drink.
I get
the
that.
Same lunch. Why?
But they didn't even make the playoffs, John. So
right.
Maybe you need.
So, exactly. So I screwed that
change it up.
You got to change it up, I think.
Exactly. So we might do superstitions down the line. Megan and Brooke and I will talk about it, see if we want to do superstitions, especially around the fall, around October, where they come into, more prominence. So, but let's start out with Brooke. I love this Iceman curse story. So take it away, Brooke.
I'm excited. This one was really interesting to me. It's not really a cursed object. I don't want to refer to him as an object. Also, sorry if you hear my dog squeaking his squeaker toy in the background, but just something we have to live with. But a cursed man, I suppose. So this is about it's about Ötzi the Iceman. Also, I just want to also preface, I know we always say spooky stories about the Midwest in the intro. Oh my God, my dog is being ridiculous. This does not take place anywhere near the Midwest. This takes place in Italy. I was trying to find like a cursed object story that related to something in the Midwest, but again, I found a couple, but I didn't really like believe them. So I kind of picked this one because I thought it was really interesting, and I kind of believe there might be something to it, but we'll see. Nice. We'll see. So, to set the scene, in a remote area of the Ötztal Alps in northern Italy, about 5,300 years ago, a warrior was shot in the back by an arrow, striking a main artery. He was likely dead from blood loss within minutes, and he ended up being perfectly preserved in ice, becoming one of the oldest and most well-preserved mummies in the world. In 1991, he was finally discovered by a German tourist and his wife, but maybe he was not so happy about being disturbed, as many of the people, oh my freaking God, many of the people surrounding the discovery and research of Ötzi suffered untimely and strange deaths.
Interesting.
So, yeah, it is interesting. You will see. I feel like you guys find this very interesting. So, from the Penn Museum, I just want to give a little bit of background about the discovery of Ötzi. So the Penn Museum, this is a direct quote from them. It's a little long, but I think it's interesting. So he was found on the border between Italy and Austria at an altitude of 3,200 meters above sea level. He is a well-preserved male human corpse, dark in color, and dates to the early Copper Age, indicating he is more than 5,000 years old. His belongings, which were scattered around his body, included a bow and quiver with arrows, a complete copper-bladed axe, a flint dagger with a wicker sheath, 2 birch wood vessels clad with maple leaves, remnants of a backpack, a leather pouch with small objects, fur and leather garments, shoes, and other minor artifacts. So it's really cool. He was found with like all this stuff around him. So they like were able to put together like a very good kind of story around his death and like learn a ton from this mummy. So it's really interesting.
Yes.
Also, Ötzi was 5'2" and estimated to be about 46 years old when he died. And he is one of the oldest mummies and most well-preserved. And he actually lived before the ancient Egyptian pyramids were even constructed. So I thought that was interesting as well. So he's older than any of the Egyptian mummies.
I would think that 46 years old would actually be a pretty good age way back then.
Yeah, I was also thinking that because, wouldn't expect that.
No.
Yeah, so there's a lot of interesting stories around this mummy and his discovery and the people who were involved with his discovery and like initial research of his body and the untimely deaths that they faced. So the first one that happened, so remember this discovery was in 1991. So about a year later, his first victim, so to speak, was a man named Rainer Henn. So Rainer Henn was the head of the forensic team who initially examined Ötzi, and he was actually the one, he was one of the first people to make contact with him, and he was even the one to pick up his body with his bare hands to place him into a body bag. So really interesting. He had very obviously close contact with Ötzi. And he actually died in a car crash on his way to give a lecture about Ötzi in 1992. He was
vicious.
Yeah, very, very interesting, very sad. He was 64 years old. And he loved what he did. So at least he got to do some really cool stuff before he died. But
hey, Brooke.
What?
Brooke, this is interesting. 46, 64.
That's true. That's true. And I will say, like, you'll see a lot of the guys who we'll talk about were kind of in that same age range as Ötzi, which I think is kind of interesting. But yeah, 46, 64, that is interesting.
Yeah, you will see that with my curse I will bring up. There's going to be a bunch of numbers in there that you'll go, wow. So that's kind of, you hear that with curses a lot too. That numbers,
a lot of numbers,
play a significant part in the curses.
For sure.
Yeah.
So the next person to die was named Kurt Fritz, and he died not long after Rainer Henn. And he was actually a mountaineer who actually led Rainer Henn to Ötzi's body. So basically this German tourist found it. He like reported it. And then Kurt Fritz was like a local mountaineer who like knew the area very well. So he led Rainer Henn out to his body safely. So he was a very experienced climber, mountaineer. He knew the area super well. However, he actually died in an avalanche in like shortly after Rainer Henn died. He was only 52 years old. And on the expedition he was on, he was the only person in his party who was actually struck by this avalanche and killed, which was very strange as well. So I don't think he was necessarily in the same exact area where they found Ötzi or anything, but it was strange and kind of untimely that he died in this way, given the situation. At this point, though, they haven't really talked about the quote unquote curse yet. These were just kind of thought of as like two sad things that happened. But then another thing happened not long after Kurt Fritz died. A man named Rainer Holzel. So we have Rainer Henn and Rainer Holzel. Rainer Holzel was actually a journalist, and he was the only man who was given permission to film the removal of Ötzi's body from the mountain. So he was there like taking pictures and video of like the exhumation of his body, I guess, although they didn't really like have to uncover him. He was kind of just laying out there. So he died tragically again at age 47 from a brain tumor. And this was only months after he actually released a documentary about the excavation of Ötzi's body. He released like an hour-long documentary. So again, strange. He was 47. Ötzi was 46. I thought it was just kind of interesting that he was that young, but he was, I'm pretty sure he was known to be like a pretty healthy guy. And he just happened to get a brain tumor and sadly pass away.
Yeah.
So that was interesting. I will say something kind of odd to me was specifically for the last two guys I talked about. So Kurt Fritz and Rainer Holzel. I wasn't really able to find like their exact death date. So I knew like Rainer Henn was 1992. That was like pretty set in stone. But Kurt Fritz and Rainer Holzel have both said that it happened shortly after Rainer Henn's death. But I couldn't find like an obituary online or anything for either of these guys. And for Rainer Holzel specifically, it said that he was like a very well-known Australian journalist. And I still like couldn't find anything about him other than stuff specifically related to like the curse and the Iceman. So I just thought that was a little interesting. It was like 1992, so I don't know if they would have like, and obviously a lot of this happened in like Austria and Italy and stuff, so maybe the obituaries would be in another language and I couldn't easily find them in English. I'm not really sure, but I did try to find them and I couldn't really like confirm anything because I was trying to find the exact date of all of these deaths. So all I know is supposedly they happened shortly after Rainer Henn's, but moving on a little bit to 2004. So this is, about 10 to 11 years after the other guys' deaths. This is the death that happened that really kind of convinced people that something weird was going on. And this one's a little creepy. So Helmut Simon was the man who he was the tourist who actually found Ötzi's body in the first place when he was with his wife in 1991. And so 13 years after his discovery, he was, I guess, like kind of frustrated because he thought that he deserved some kind of like, I don't know, some kind of money for finding Ötzi because and fair enough, like they were making so much money off of like displaying his body at museums and stuff. And he's like, hey, I found this mummy. Like I haven't gotten anything for it. And I saw like two different stories. One story said that, One story said that he never actually got a finder's fee and he was still really frustrated at this point. But another one said that he was finally awarded a finder's fee. And so as like a celebration, he actually went back to the Ötztal Mountains where he found Ötzi.
Yeah.
But either way, he did go back to the Ötztal Mountains. And while he was climbing in the same area where he found Ötzi, a freak blizzard came in and actually he fell like 300 feet off the cliff to his death.
Yikes.
Yeah. And so he ended up being like, well, they said he was frozen to death. He probably fell from his fall and then froze afterwards. But it was just very interesting that he was found frozen like in the same spot where he found Ötzi to begin with.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate.
Yeah, and again, like it's very like quintessential curse type thing. So I feel like that's kind of why all of a sudden people were like, oh, like, wait, we have to go back and look at all these other deaths now because what's going on?
Right.
So very interesting. One thing is Helmut Simon was 67. So not that that's like old or anything, but to be like hiking through the Alps, it is a little older. Like maybe that wasn't the best thing for him to be doing.
Yeah, exactly.
So kind of interesting. But then this one was also very odd to me. So when Helmut Simon disappeared, this man, Dieter Warnecke, was another like mountaineer guy. So he was on the mountain rescue team. And he was sent out to find Helmut, to find his body because they had like assumed he was dead. And he found Helmut, they recovered his body. And then within an hour of Helmut's funeral, Dieter actually died of a heart attack at age 45. Yeah. Like, isn't that weird? Like, that's weird.
That is
very
crazy.
Yeah. So again, another one. People are just kind of like, there's something weird is going on. Oh my god, I'm apologize about my dog. He's being so freaking annoying.
We're all right.
Just sorry about the yipping and squeaking in the background. But he's very cute though. But so there's two more deaths.
Yeah.
That happen. This next one is a man named Conrad Spindler. This happened in 2004 as well. So this was just a couple months after these other two deaths happened. So Conrad Spindler was an archaeologist who was one of the first to investigate Ötzi's remains. And he actually publicly kind of scoffed at the curse and was calling it all like media hype. He was kind of making fun of it. And he even said, like, the next thing you know, like, I'm going to be the one who's next or whatever.
Oh, dude.
And sure enough, I know. Sure enough, he was the one who was next. And he died shortly after saying this due to complications from multiple sclerosis at age 55.
Wow.
So,
man.
So he shouldn't have said anything. But then this is the most recent one. This was in 2005. So still, it's been a while since the most recent death.
Yeah.
But this was Dr. Tom Loy. So Dr. Tom Loy was a U.S.-born molecular archaeologist. And Loy did not believe in the curse. And he actually did some really interesting work. So he carried out a DNA analysis of Ötzi, piecing together his death and determining with certainty that he was not alone at the time of his death. So a lot of people believe that Ötzi was kind of like, in the mountains and someone just like kind of came up to him and shot him with the arrow and killed him. And it was kind of tragic. But he actually like put together all this evidence showing that there was evidence of like 4 different humans' blood on his clothes, which was interesting because it proved that he was not alone. And they actually, based on like, I don't know where the blood was like on his clothing, they gathered that he actually was hunting with a companion. And then they got into like a territorial skirmish, and Ötzi appears to have like leaned against this companion for support as he passed away. So I know. So this was like considered a major discovery because people, like a bunch of people, like people really loved Ötzi. Like they, were really excited when he was found, especially in Europe, because he was such a major discovery. And so when they found out that he like didn't have this super tragic death that they thought he did, they were very happy. So people were very excited about like Tom Loy's.
Maybe we'll cover this here in your when you're winding up here. But what is on to me is nobody took his stuff.
Yeah, that is true.
Isn't that strange? Because
that his stuff was still around.
Like, you would definitely take his weapons. Why wouldn't you take his weapon? Why wouldn't you take his clothes? Why wouldn't you take?
That is true. I mean, I guess. Yeah, I guess I don't know. I don't know enough about like what people were like back so long ago. Maybe they thought like taking his stuff would have been like some kind of bad omen or something. I don't really know.
That's what I was thinking.
Because another curse on top of a curse.
Yeah, could be. That's interesting though.
Yeah. The other thing too is that or maybe, I mean, who knows too, maybe his companion like killed those guys like before, a lot of things I guess could have happened. But one thing too is I saw a couple times in different articles that I read that like this story about him getting like killed by an arrow and like bleeding out immediately and everything was a little bit like romanticized. Like that's what they initially kind of thought probably happened, and then people kind of like took it and ran with it and were like, oh, this like tragic story about this old Stone Age warrior, and so they didn't even really like people didn't really want to hear a different story. So I guess like there still is a little bit of, it's a little up to interpretation, like what happened a little bit. So yeah, but it is interesting. But it's good to know that in either case, it sounds like he, had someone with him when he passed away. But and so people were really happy about like Dr. Tom Loy's discoveries, and they were considered very important and influential at the time. And as it goes, Loy was actually on the cusp of finishing a book about his discovery when at age 63 he was found dead in his home in Brisbane. According to his family, he was actually diagnosed with a blood condition shortly after becoming involved with Ötzi 12 years prior. So yeah, so he started doing research on Ötzi like pretty much right after they found him. I guess 12 years would be like 1993. He started doing research on Ötzi. And right around that time, he got diagnosed with a blood disease, and presumably his death had something to do with his blood disease. At least that's what his family said. So again, it's untimely. It's sad. But again, like, people die. But so this is all obviously strange, but it is important to kind of remember that tons of researchers and scientists have come into contact with Ötzi in some way over the last 3 decades, because he was a very major discovery, with like lots of researchers, lots of photographers photographing his body and doing all this stuff to research him. And most of them have gone on to live full lives with no untimely deaths. However, I think like the main thing is, it is weird that like 3 of the people who were there when he was first, or 4 of the people who were there when he was first like found and removed from the mountain, all died in very strange ways. Like, I think that's the main thing that people think is odd. But again, like, there are other people there on the mountain that day too that did not die in strange ways. So, and a lot of the researchers involved don't necessarily believe in this curse, but it is interesting. And if you're wondering where Ötzi is today, he is actually good.
Thanks.
And I have that answer for you. He is in a refrigerated chamber at the South Tyrol Archaeological Museum in Bolzano, Italy. So he has his own custom chamber where he is constantly maintained at negative 21.2 degrees Fahrenheit or negative 30 degrees Celsius. And he attracts up to 300,000 visitors per year to that museum. Yeah, so very cool. A lot of people still really love going to see him and think it's really interesting. And it is interesting. If you look at pictures of him, it's crazy to think that this guy's 5,300 years old. It's pretty cool.
That was an awesome story, Brooke. One of the things that I always get from these stories is, and this is where the skeptics come in. I mean, if you are, mountain climbing is dangerous itself, right? I mean, you never know. Like, all these people who freehand climbing cliff faces, you're like, are you crazy? I know. No ropes or nothing. And there was a documentary that I watched called Free Solo. And it's about this guy who's climbing
yes, I watched that too.
Yeah.
Gives me anxiety.
Like, are you out of your mind? One slip and you're dead. Right?
Right.
Yeah.
So with curses, you're kind of like, he's 60. Well, you were talking about that one gentleman, Helmut, I believe. Where he's 67 years old. Climbing a mountain? Huh?
Right.
A little risky.
I'm taking a nap. That's my crazy thing for the day.
Exactly.
So I think that's interesting. And then, like, heart conditions and stuff like that, you don't know, right? Because we've all either heard or have a family member. You're like, oh, Uncle Jack, he died. Like, suddenly you're like, what happened? Oh, he had a heart attack. You're like, really?
And they seem totally healthy, and but stuff happens.
Exactly. So with that curse, just what I think it is it's kind of a strange coincidence. That's kind of my feeling on this.
I agree.
What do you think, Megan? Do you think it's just strange coincidence, or do you believe in this curse?
I thought it was really interesting that it was only men that were being affected, which is really interesting because there's so many of them.
Yeah.
But in a way, I almost feel like this is a nice redemption story for him. Like, he probably would have never known that he'd still be, having his story told thousands of years later. So in a kind of weird way, it's kind of a touching story to me.
I agree. Yeah, it's interesting. It's all men, like, kind of in, like, around his age range. Like, a lot of them were in their 40s. Helmut was a little older, but 40s and 50s seem to be. It is kind of interesting.
Yeah, I just think what's interesting more about it too is over 300,000 visitors per year go through that, and how many of those 300,000
right?
You know what I'm saying?
Exactly.
If there was a lot, if this is really cursed, let's say 100,000 of these people are dying, and everybody be like, "Whoops!"
Right?
Exactly. So it's one of those things too. When people have talked about King Tut's curse, right? All that. One of the things they found out later was, Well, obviously, these places that they go in are not exactly the cleanest places.
Yeah, they've
Mhm.
been, shut
So,
off for thousands of
right,
years. Yeah.
exactly. So when you unseal it, all these dangerous bacteria and molds and fungus, and you
Mm-hmm.
breathe that right in. Well, yeah, duh.
Right.
Not
Exactly.
gonna happen to you.
That is
So,
very true.
so it's kind of interesting with this is people are handling it. Although that one doctor who handled it for years, he had MS.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of ongoing. That thing kind of starts and then it gets worse and worse and worse. But
Mhm.
Mm-hmm.
um, yeah, interesting. I love it. It's a really interesting one. So, Megan, you have a chair.
Yeah.
Doesn't sound very spooky, does it? But it is.
What is it? But I've heard about this one and I love this one. This is one of my favorites. Too.
Great. This is a great story. I'm excited to share it with you all. So, before I get started, I want you to just take a second and imagine a wooden chair in your minds, okay?
I'm
This
closing
chair is
my
like
eyes.
really, yeah, perfect, John. Keep those closed.
I'm closing
So
them.
this chair is
Close.
like really well built. It's like a
Yeah.
nice dark stained oak. It's really
Uh-huh.
solid. It has nice
Ooh.
armrests
Ooh,
with
I
like
like
a
it.
tall back and a ornate wooden spindles
Ooh,
on it.
I
Like
love
it's
it.
a good solid chair. So have either of you ever, owned a chair like this, or maybe your grandparents had one?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
of course.
it's your run-of-the-mill, nicely built chair, all right? So keep that in your minds because this is
I got
basically
it.
the chair that I'm going to be describing in my
Hey,
story
hey,
today.
Megan, I'm drinking a beer. Is that okay? I can drink
Yeah,
beer
go
when
for
I'm
it.
on this chair.
This is Wisconsin, John.
I can drink a beer in my mind when I'm on this chair.
Only thing you're missing is the cheese curds.
I got
Yeah.
them. I got cheese curds too. So I got beer, cheese curds. I'm sitting on the chair. I am there right now. So
Perfect. Get comfy, John, because this is
I'm
a scary
comfy.
story.
Delicious.
All right, perfect. So this story I'm going to tell today is called Thomas Busby's Stoop Chair, which sounds very wholesome, right? Sounds like a nice
Yeah.
little children's book. It's not. It's
Does.
very messy.
It's not.
It's not. It's bad. So you guys are gonna love this cursed story I'm gonna tell
Yeah.
you. So when you kind of take a look at this wooden chair, it's like your run-of-the-mill chair. Nothing
Huh.
really looks too off about it, but this is actually one of the most cursed chairs in existence, and it's from the 1700s. It's kind of cool. So back in the day, I'm going to give some backstory. There was this guy named Thomas Busby, and this dude was not a good guy. He was a drunkard. He was violent towards his wife. He was just like a general bully. Like people didn't like him.
Yeah.
And he lived back
Mm.
in North Yorkshire in the UK. So again, this is also a story that doesn't take place in the Midwest, but it's definitely worth
That's okay.
telling. Yes.
International babies.
All right, Thomas Busby. One day in 1702, Thomas Busby, he just decides, I'm going to murder my father-in-law, Daniel.
Okay.
You just wake up and murder someone,
Yeah, what the
happens.
hell?
Yeah. Sometimes.
Ah,
So Thomas and Daniel, they were actually running a coin counterfeiting business together, and they got in an argument about the business. Like I said, these are two seedy dudes. So, Busby ends up killing his father-in-law, Daniel, unfortunately. So Busby gets arrested, he's tried, and then he's condemned to death by hanging. You know how it goes in 1700s.
True.
Not
Yep.
good.
not good.
But this is where it's kind of messed up. After Busby
Kind
gets
of.
hanged. Yeah, it gets worse, John.
It gets worse?
It gets a lot worse. After his execution, they took Busby's corpse and they suspended it in chains at the gallows for, everybody to see. And
Oh no.
in my mind, it's like, okay, you do that to somebody's body, this ghost is going to be ticked, right?
Oh, right.
Right.
Something bad's going to happen out of this story. So there was this close by inn, which later became known as the Busby's Stoop Inn. And it kind of got its name from the stoop, or, the post which his body was seen on after he was put to death. But allegedly, this place is said to be haunted by Busby's ghost. And there's this chair at the inn that's kind of gained this sinister reputation that's tied to Busby's ghost. So there are a lot of different stories about why a chair just got cursed from this guy's ghost. So one story I heard was that Busby was cursing in this chair on his way to his execution. Whereas other stories say that he was drunk and he was sitting in the chair when they kind of yanked him out and he was arrested. So that's how he's supposedly tied to this chair. No one really knows, but there's a lot of speculation about it.
Interesting.
But here's where it gets weird. Over the years, several people who have sat in this chair have faced untimely deaths, which is interesting. So back in the day, locals claim that during the Second World War, Canadian airmen from the nearby base went to this pub, and people who sat in this chair never returned from the bombings missions that they had in mainland Europe. And then in the 1970s, some fatal accidents were linked with the chair. So finally, in 1978, the pub owner was like, I don't want this in my possession anymore. I'm giving it to a museum. Probably a good choice on their part. So today, Busby's chair is at the Thirsk Museum in England. And this is so funny to me. They actually hung the chair on the wall so that nobody could sit in it.
Interesting.
So interesting. So I guess since it was removed from the pub, nobody has sat in it since. So that's a good thing. But
I have a question.
Yeah, go for it, Brooke.
When it was at the pub, was it just like a normal chair among all the other chairs?
That's what I want to know. I couldn't find any information about it.
Yeah. Like, I don't know if it was like up on a pedestal, like on display, or if it was like...
I think it was just on the floor for people to sit in.
Oh, so people didn't even like know the risk they were taking?
No. That's kind of unfair, actually.
Yeah.
So I can add some commentary to it. No, that chair was put out in the bar for years and you could sit on it.
Yikes.
In fact, there would be people who would dare each other to sit in that chair. So people in the local neighborhood knew about the chair, right? So
but others
be like, hey, Brooke, Megan, sit in that chair. I dare you.
Well, and it's drunk people too. Of course, they're going to want to, dare each other.
Yeah. Right. So there are some stories just to add to this a little bit because I when you were looking this up, one of the things I just remembered is like people who have sat in this chair have gotten car accidents, have gotten into, like fights and have died and heart attacks and on and on and on and on. There's just a lot of weirdness to that chair, right?
But if they were drunk, then getting in car accidents maybe was not so unusual.
You might be onto something, Brooke.
Right. There you go. You heard it here first, the Dairyland Fright.
All right, guys. I have a plot twist for you, though.
Ooh, plot twist.
So I was doing some research, and this furniture historian, I guess those exist, decided that he was going to examine Busby's chair. And when he was taking a look at it, he found that it was actually made with machine-turned spindles, which weren't that kind of machinery wasn't available in the 1800s when Busby was around. So he actually dated this chair to 1840, which is 138 years after Busby's execution. So that's just one person's take. So to me, this seems like a story that was kind of made up and added to over the years. So personally, to me, I would probably debunk this story, but I don't know about you. What do you guys think?
Brooke?
Yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, if someone, I don't know many furniture historians. I can't imagine that many people out there have that title. So I feel like I have to trust his opinion. So yeah.
Oh, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, I was just gonna say I would agree with you, Megan, that I feel like it probably debunked itself there. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what's so funny about this is, and curses is, it's on your mind, right? If I would hand either one of you a cursed pencil, and I would say, Brooke, do not write with this pencil. It is cursed.
Right.
You'd immediately, your mind's going, why is John giving me a cursed pencil, and why is it cursed? And it's a pencil, right?
Right.
So either your mind,
like,
yeah. So
and then I think
thinking about that.
Right. And then like any bad thing that happens to you after you use that pencil, you'd be like, oh my God, it's the cursed pencil that did this to me.
Pencil. right?
Right. And I think a lot of it comes back to that is people almost like manifesting themselves into these bad situations. Like, oh my God, I sat in a cursed chair, then I got in a car accident. It's because of the
Right.
cursed chair. But they're probably like panicking about it the whole time. That's maybe
Right.
why they got in a car accident, because they were
Mhm.
anxious about it, you know?
Absolutely. And by the way, this is why you listen to Dairyland Frights. Look at the great facts we have.
Right.
You don't find this on any other podcast. Let me tell you that. You find it right here on Dairyland Frights. So awesome. Fine, Megan. That's great. And like I said, no, it's not cursed. Come on.
I'm going to go with no on this one.
Yeah. How many times you've been out at a bar and someone's sitting on a bar stool and they're just having a crappy day and they're like, I hate this place and this blah, blah, blah. And you're thinking, yeah, buddy, just, sober up. Like, have that chair cursed from a kind of a scumbag like this guy was, like,
Right?
You don't have that much power. Yeah. If you told me it was like a local witch sat down on this chair and said, I cursed this chair, you might be like,
yeah.
ooh,
Then
no.
I might believe it.
Right. John, would you sit in the chair if you had an opportunity to, or would you be too scared? You would?
Absolutely. You
Yikes.
damn right I would. I am so looking forward to down the road, once we blow up, we're going to do a live thing where I'm sitting in that chair.
He's going to rip it off the wall.
Take it off the wall.
Yeah, I am.
Well, you might get arrested.
That's okay.
Now something bad happens to me.
And then,
oh, there you go.
Yeah. It'll be like, oh, I got arrested because of the curse.
Oh, there you go.
That's a good one. That's a good cop out for me. Thank you, Brooke.
Exactly.
Awesome. Yeah, I love that story. That is a great story. So, ladies, what if I told you that in Hollywood there was a cursed script that killed 6 people?
Whoa.
Interesting.
That's crazy. I need to
know
this.
6 people. One very famous person from Madison, Wisconsin.
Oh, there we go.
Okay. That's our homeland.
There's our tie-in, yeah.
So here we go. So there's this script that is not around Hollywood anymore. Nobody knows where the script is. But similar to, these curses and everything like that, people have seen this script. It's somewhere, who knows? And the script, it's called Atuk or Atuk. And see if you've heard this before, this storyline. So the story is about, it was a book first. And the story was about an Inuit poet from Baffin Island, I believe, who gets sent to Toronto. So it's a total fish out of water story. Okay, so that was the book. Okay, but when they were going to turn it into a script and adapt it to a script, the movie version is this, Inuit person lives in Alaska and ends up in New York City. And how he does that is, and again, let me see if you've heard this before or seen this movie. A woman visits his town in Alaska. She's a documentarian. And when she leaves, the Atuk, he basically stows away in the plane. And when he arrives in New York, he saves a young man who is the son of a powerful real estate mogul, and hijinks ensue.
Wow.
Have you heard that one before? Oh, maybe like Crocodile Dundee, or maybe.
Oh, right.
You know what I'm saying?
Or Elf.
Right.
Sounds like Elf to me.
Exactly. You can go on and on, like the fish out of water. Oh, I'm from the South, and now I'm in New York City. What do same old thing. So, who has this script killed? You may know some of these names, and if you don't, your parents definitely know who these people are, or people my age. So this script killed 6 people, including John Belushi, John Candy, Sam Kinison, Chris Farley.
Oh, there we go.
And Phil Hartman.
Okay.
John Belushi, he's from Animal House. He's in the 80s. Very, very, very famous comic. John Candy from the 80s and 90s. Maybe you've seen John Candy.
Love John Candy.
Trains and Automobiles.
Also, The Great Outdoors, which took place in
Great
Wisconsin.
Outdoors.
So there's another tie-in.
Sam Kinison is one of my favorite comics. Women don't like him too much because he makes fun of women a lot and screams a lot. People who know him love him. He's very, very funny. He had some really good bits. And we all know Chris Farley, right?
Of course, yes.
From Tommy Boy. Also Beverly Hills Ninja, which is one of the funniest movies I still think to this day. Phil Hartman, he was pretty much in every 80s comedy. He was on Saturday Night Live, used to play Bill Clinton, impersonate Bill Clinton. If you see him, you'll go like, oh, okay, yeah, that guy. Oh, okay, how'd that happen? And, yeah. And then a friend, Michael O'Donoghue, was a friend of John Candy. He died too. He's kind of like a writer, producer. So this is what happens. Everybody, well, at least these people who have read this script and have said, yeah, I want to be a part of it. So they first gave the script back in the early 80s to John Belushi. So John Belushi was unbelievably popular. He just came off of like Animal House, and he did a movie called Neighbors, and he was just Blues Brothers, just huge. I mean, one of the biggest comedy stars at that time. And Belushi was found tragically dead in a hotel room in Chateau Marmont by his trainer Bruce Wallace. He was only 33. Now, listen to my numbers. Pay attention. Play close attention to the numbers, ladies, and for you listening at home. The cause of death was determined to be drug-related, most likely a speedball. Remember that too, okay? Remember the cause of death.
Okay.
Now, his death was investigated by a forensic pathologist, and the findings were disputed. Because 2 months later, and this is really sad, his girlfriend or fiance, nobody knows who she really was, to be honest, Catherine Evelyn Smith, admitted she had been with Belushi on the night of his death and had given him the fatal dosage.
Ooh.
And the case was reported. She was arrested and charged as first-degree murder. She died in jail a few years ago. But this is shortly after John Belushi read this script and said, I'm in. Okay?
Right.
Okay.
So John Candy, he died of a heart attack. How many times we've heard in today's episode? After reading the script, and he was 43 years old. So then Sam Kinison died in a car crash. He was 38 years old. And the weird thing about him was, yes, he was a drug fiend and he was off the rails. But just before the script, Sam Kinison went totally clean. He checked into rehab. He found God. He was going to turn his life around. His friends and family were so proud of him that he was able to do this. And when he got in his car crash, the weird thing was the person in the car crash with him, a couple scratches, no problem. And when the police and the ambulance got there, they thought he was going to live. It looks like, a couple bruises, some scratches. But on the way to the hospital, he died. And nobody knows why. Like, to this day, they're trying to figure that out. They're saying it's a heart attack or something with his heart, but still, that doesn't make sense. And nobody really knows. So then Chris Farley, he died of a drug overdose. Speedball, like his hero Belushi at 33. And Chris
he was only 33. That's sad.
Yeah. And if you watch any documentaries on Chris Farley, watch them. They're really sad. I mean, you think this guy had everything. He was funny, he was charming, he was all these things. He had that homespun, funny Midwest kind of guy, really nice guy, vibe. And boy, his life outside of that was not so hot. And then, so again, all of these read the script, said, I'm in. And as soon as that happened, just shortly after they died, and this is the worst thing of all, is so Chris Farley, before he died, gave Phil Hartman the script, who was 49 years old, and told him, hey, why don't you do the script? I don't think I'm going to do it. And Phil Hartman looked at it and he said, hey, okay, I'm in. soon as he said that, the next day, he was fatally shot at 3 a.m. by his wife, Bryn, who entered his bedroom. So what I'm saying is, what do you notice a similar eerie pattern, a similar number of all the deaths?
I mean, 3s and 4s.
Threes.
Okay.
Because think about it.
Interesting.
So
43.
Harley died at 33. John Belushi.
33, 43. Yeah.
Okay.
Oh,
Sam
wow.
Kinison died at 38. Okay. Phil Hartman was shot at 3 a.m.
Good point.
Interesting.
I thought that was just weird. Like, all these have 3s in it for the most part. All of them, immediately after they read the script, died. Now, John Candy's close friend, Michael O'Donoghue, I didn't bring him up because he already had some heart issues, but he died like 3 days later after reading the script.
Oh, wow.
So unfortunate.
All of 3s. And now you may ask, hey, John, sounds like this is a script somebody's going to do. Well, it has been passed. And hopefully these are none of your favorite stars, but it has been passed to like comedy giants. Like Chris Rock has been passed to. Jamie Foxx. I'm trying to Adam Sandler. I'm trying to think of the other people who passed. Oh, just recently there was a rumor that got passed to Kevin Hart. So if any,
be careful.
That's what the thing is. Like here's the thing. And before I ask you what you guys yes or no on this script has been passed around since the early 80s, late 70s, and they've tried to get numerous people, but mainly they focused on big stars at the time. So kind of like The Chair and Ötzi, people have seen this and, none of them have died. I did a bunch of research. These are the only prominent people who have died or got sick or whatever. And like I said, it's somewhere this script is floating around and, no one's going to do it because, and I quote, people are scared. I got this from Horrorbound website. People are frightened of this script that they're either here or they will die. So
yikes.
I suppose.
Yeah. So what do you think? Cursed? Not cursed? Coincidence?
Brooke? I mean, I definitely think not. More coincidence for sure. I think like, I don't know. A lot of these actors, I know at least like John Candy and Chris Farley, they were like not maybe in the best health. And I know a lot of comedians too, just unfortunately, it is like very unfortunate. A lot of comedic actors in Hollywood like are not very happy people. Like they portray very fun, happy-go-lucky people. Like take Robin Williams, for instance, but they have a lot of issues on the side. So I think, clearly a lot of these deaths more stem from that. And it seems like the script is more just a coincidence that it was kind of going around at the time. But I feel like we see so many stories about comedic actors dying really young, and it's really tragic and sad. But yeah, I don't really feel like it has anything to do with the script. But it is interesting though, for sure.
Yeah, that the 3s. That's what shocked me when I was doing my research. Megan,
for sure.
Well, Brooke really covered it really well, but I wanted to ask you, John, is there a theory you have about the 3s, or you just notice that it's interesting?
Well, it comes back to, again, like we talk about in the paranormal, which we'll bring up, I'm sure, in future episodes, is 3 is always prominent, right? 3 a.m., Trinity, 3 knocks, where people are in a haunted house, it's knocking 3 times. So it's just, it's something to do with curses, that 3 is not the best number. You want to associate it with that curse. But then again, it was just weird that when I was reading this, it just kept on 38, 33, 3 a.m. And I was just like, that is really weird. So that's kind of my theory on it. So.
I do think part of it with that though is like when people die in their 30s, it's looked at as like a lot more tragic than people dying like later, because 30s is like very young still. So I think, you know, like they kind of focus on those ages because it's like, oh, can you believe like, you know, Chris Farley died when he was 33 years old because he was so young. So I feel like that is part of the reason why like the number 3 comes up a lot, is just because it's kind of like a sad age. I guess.
Megan, do you have anything else to add on that?
I'm gonna go with coincidental as well.
Yeah, so much.
So
that's what we're gonna go with. Yes,
I would like to see the movie though.
I do, right? It just seems like it would be a fun movie and everything like that.
Yeah.
Now, the internet is never wrong, right? It always gives us these great things. So I did find something by some weird suggestion on one of the websites I was looking at was called Horror Bound. So, you know, people are going to put in their comments. One person said when they were scouting locations, you know, to do this movie, that an Inuit like witch doctor kind of person cursed the whole thing because, well, frankly, you shouldn't be on Inuit tribal land without asking permission. And that was the thing. Now, do I believe that? Absolutely not. Because, you know, the old woman comes out and curses like 2 producers walking around looking at locations and says, you know, right? Yeah, exactly. So that was our cursed episode. We'd love to know if you believe in curses. Do you have any curses out there you'd like to share? DairylandFrights@gmail.com.
Are you cursed? Let us know if you're cursed.
Yes.
That'd be fun.
We'd love to know that. And anything else, Megan or Brooke? Anything else you want to bring up about these curses?
I don't think so. I think this was fun. It's
yes.
It is fun to look at for sure.
Yeah. Megan?
It really makes you think about, you know, the random objects like your bunk bed from hell that we covered in an earlier episode, a chair, a script. It's just like very unassuming things. Anything can happen.
That's true.
Absolutely. So please, like we say every week, you know, give a ghost a hi from us, and do not curse your ghost.
We love our ghosts.
Yeah, so your ghosts don't curse us. And remember, go to YouTube, hit subscribe, comment. We love all our super fans, especially Sonny Commander. We love to hear from you. You know, please comment on there. You know, I know you have said that you want to go to a couple of these sites and check out, especially the car that Megan was talking about in the previous episode with our UFO and aliens one. So again, great episode. Stay away from curses. Ladies, I love you. It's been great as always. And we will talk later.
Sounds good. Thanks, John.